Stage 2 of this project deals with drawing with all of the basic shapes that's in Adobe Illustrator. I've got my document set up. You can see in my Layers panel I've got the Icons layer selected, the Backgrounds layer is locked and turned off, and I can see my template layer, but it's also locked down. All of the drawing we're going to do is going to be inside of this Icons layer. Before we get started, one thing to note is where you can find most of these tools. If you don't see any of the tools we're talking about, you can click and hold on the rectangle tool and you can see there's a bunch of tools that will pop out that are related to it. In addition to this, later on you can find other tools like the line segment tool or any of the other ones located under here. But if you don't see it, simply click and hold and that will open up this tool as well. To get started on this, I'm going to use Command and the plus sign to zoom in and hold down my space bar until I can see this little clapperboard. The first tool we're going to use is going to be our rectangle tool, and with it selected, go up to your fill color and set it to be none, and make sure your stroke color is set to black with a 1-point stroke. The first rectangle we're going to make is going to be at this bottom portion of the clapper, and we're going to click and drag until it covers all of that bottom edge. To make sure it's the correct width and height, we can open our Transform panel, and if you don't see it, you can go to Window and down to Transform. From here, we can type in the exact height and width dimensions, but let's make sure it's at the top left reference point. The width of our little rectangle should be exactly 4 inches, and the height of it should be 2.5 inches. Once this is done, if you can see that it's off by just a little bit, that's okay, but we can always use our black arrow selection tool, click on it and either drag it down, or I like to use my arrow keys and just nudge it down into place. Also, with it selected, let's go up to Edit and Copy to make a copy of this. Then we can go to Edit and we're going to paste it right in place, or right in the same spot. So there's another one that's on top of this one. Next, now that it's duplicated, let's move it upward. Go to your Transform panel, and with it still selected, make sure you've got the bottom right-hand corner reference point selected, and let's subtract minus 2.5 inches from the Y position of about 5. You can see that'll automatically subtract it from that value and move it up from here. While here, we can also divide the height of it into a quarter. So for the H value of 2.5, let's do divided by 4 and hit return, and you can see now it fits nicely on the top of that one. One more time, let's make another copy and use it for the smaller rectangle. With it selected, go to Edit and Copy, and then Edit, Paste in Front. This time we're going to keep it in the same spot, but let's divide the width of it by doing divided by 8. And that'll give us a smaller one over here on the left-hand side as well. Now let's make a rectangle for the inside of our clapperboard. Use your black arrow selection tool and click on the larger rectangle. We can go up to Edit and let's copy it, and then Edit and Paste in Front one more time. This time, in order to scale it, we're going to use the Scale tool. Scale tool is found right here. With it selected, I'm going to click and drag on the edge of it. You can see how it's going to move based on that center reference point. And I'm trying to align it to that top and left and right edge as close as you can, right about there. If we want to bring the bottom edge up, simply click on the top path once. You can see now that our blue reference point has moved up here, and now I can click on the bottom and I can drag it up until it fits nicely inside of that area too. If your numbers are slightly off from what the book says, that's okay. As long as it's primarily inside of this area, that's what we're looking for. Another thing you can do to deselect the area is to hold down the Command key. This will temporarily swap you over to our Selection tool where you can click away from the object, and then when you let go, you can see it's been deselected. Now's a good time to save what we're working on. So let's go to File and Save and continue on. Next, I'm going to do Command and the plus sign and zoom in so that I can see this smaller box. We'll use our black arrow selection tool to select the smaller box, and let's use the shear tool to get it to skew and fit this darker area behind it. The shear tool is hiding underneath your scale tool, so click and hold on it to select your shear tool. As we did with the others, we need to change our reference point, so click and hold on this bottom left corner to change your blue circle to down there. Next, you can click and drag until you scale it over or shear it over to match that outline. Once it's done, we can choose our selection tool, and now we need to make a copy of it and move it over to this side. To make a very precise movement, you can double click on the Move tool icon. This will open up the Move dialog box, and you can tell it exactly how far and the distance you want it to be moving. In our case, we want to move it horizontally 1 inch and vertically 0 inches. With this done, we also want to make a copy of it, so make sure to click Copy, and now you can see how you have 2 of them moved over. To do this again, you can go up to Object, Transform, and do Transform again. And you can see another copy has now been made and moved over. Let's do it one more time by Object, Transform again, and there's our third one. Again, if yours is off by just a little bit, that's okay for what we're doing on this project. Now we can make a copy of it and reflect it up here. I'm going to move my transform out of the way. First, we need to group everything. With our black arrow selection tool, click and drag over all of these top rectangles to make sure they're all selected. We can go up to Object and Group, and that's going to treat all of these objects as if they're one solid object now. To make a reflected copy of it, we're going to use the Reflection tool. The Reflect tool is located underneath the Rotate tool, so click and hold on it. With it selected, double-click on the tool options, and this will bring up the Reflect dialog box. We want to reflect this along the horizontal axis, and we want to make a copy of it. So now we've got both of them. We can hold down the Command key to click and drag up until it fits nicely on this top edge. Now let's use the Rotate tool to rotate it into place. The Rotate is located underneath the Reflect, so there it is there. We need to change our point of reference to the bottom left-hand side, so click once to place your blue circle there. Then it's easy enough to click and drag and rotate it till it matches the top edge for that. Now let's fill these in with black and white alternating colors. Since we've got a large rectangle behind everything, let's fill just that in with white. In order to select something in a group, we need to use the Direct Selection tool, and this is the white arrow tool at the top right of your toolbox. We can click away, then carefully click on this right edge to only access this particular rectangle. With it selected, I'm going to go over to my Properties panel, scroll down to the bottom, and from here I'm going to change my fill color to be white. You can see now how it fills it in. If I was to click only inside of this object and drag it, you can see how it will move, but it'll keep all the others in place, even though they're still grouped together. Let's do the same for the bottom one. Just click on the edge and change your fill color to be white. In order to select the ones on the inside, we need to use our Lasso tool. The lasso is located underneath your Direct Selection tool. Carefully click and drag around the inside, but don't touch the outside edges. We only want to get those inside lines. This will select all of these inside rectangles, and with those selected, we can change our fill color to be black. Let's do the same for the bottom. Again, click and drag, and be careful to only choose the inside lines. Then click on the fill color and change it to black. You can now click away and deselect everything. The last thing we need to do is to fill in the bottom portion as well. Let's choose the inside rectangle first using our Selection tool. Change its fill color to be white. Then we can choose the outside rectangle and change its fill color to be black. From here, we can also rotate these bottom edges. To do this, make sure you go to View and you can see your corner widgets. And so I can see mine says Hide. That's what we want to see. With this done, to only select these two corners, use your white arrow Direct Selection tool. Click and drag over those two corners. Then you can click on the little corner widget and drag it up until the R says 0.25 right about there. With this done, I'm going to do Command and the minus sign to back out so I can see the entire thing. Use your black arrow selection tool to click and drag over the entire object. Let's go up to Object and group it together. With this done, now we can go to File and Save, and let's move on to using our circle tools. The first tool we're going to use for this one is going to be our ellipse tool. You can find it nested underneath your rectangle tool, so click and hold on it. Also, while we're here, let's reset our default fill and stroke colors by clicking on the default fill and stroke option at the bottom of your toolbox. With the fill color selected, let's set that to be no fill right there. I'm going to zoom in so I can see this really nice and full. The first circle we want to draw will be drawn from the center point outward. So place your cursor towards the center of that, hold down the Option key, and click and drag until you make a perfect circle. Now, I'll also say to hold down the Shift key. That'll always give you a perfect circle. And if you find that yours is off by a little bit, you can also hold down the space bar and be able to move your circle around until you get it nice and in the center. So there it is lined up with this. Once that is done, if you do need to make adjustments, you can always use your arrow keys to nudge it into place. To make sure it's the correct size, let's open our Transform panel. Make sure the height and the width of it is set to 0.5 for both of those values. Now it's perfectly aligned. The next thing we want to do is to make some copies of this. There's a quicker way of doing it besides copying and pasting. If you go to Window, make sure your contextual taskbar is checked on. This little taskbar will appear at the bottom of whatever you're working on. In our case, we're going to choose our selection tool, the black arrow, and here you can see it here. If you quickly want to duplicate something, click on the little plus sign icon, and that will make a copy and paste directly on top of it. From here, we can type in a new value to scale it up. Just make sure your reference point is set to the very center of your object. For the second one, we want this circle to be 1.25 for both the width and the height. There it is there. Let's do it again by clicking on Duplicate. Now a new one is created. For the third circle, it'll be 1.7 for both the width and the height. And let's do it one more time. Duplicate, and this new one will be exactly 4 by 4. With this done, let's go up to File and Save and continue on. Now let's draw some lines so that we can divide up these circles into some pie shapes. The tool we're going to use is the Line Segment tool. Whoops, will I cancel? To draw a straight line, move your cursor till it's the center point of your concentric circles, hold down the Option or Alt key, click and drag, and if you're looking at your cursor, we want the D value, the distance, to be about 4.25 inches with a 270-degree value. You can let go once it's done. To quickly make a copy of this, we've got it selected. You can use your selection tool. Let's duplicate it. And we can go to our Transform panel and let's rotate this new one to be 290 degrees. With our selection tool still active, we can hold down Shift, hold down Shift and get both, click on both of them so they're both selected, and rotate both of those into position by changing the rotation value to be 25 degrees. Again, if it's off by a little bit, that's okay. With this done, let's turn off our contextual task window because it gets in the way. So we'll choose Hide Contextual Taskbar. Also, let's select this third line and let's hide it away because we're not going to want to cut this for the next part. So with it selected, go up to Object, down to Hide, and choose Selection. It'll still be there, it's just not visible for the next part that we're going to be working on. Now comes the fun part. Let's take the lines that we've done and divide it up as if they were cutting through a pie. We're going to click and drag over the entire object to make sure everything is selected. From here, I'm going to move my transform window out of the way. Let's open our Pathfinder window. I'm going to go to Window and then choose Pathfinder. This Pathfinder panel will allow you to divide or merge multiple objects together to get different results. The one we want to choose will be this first one on the second line to divide. With this done, it looks like not much has happened. You've gotten rid of the stuff that's on the outside edge, but if I was to ungroup it, you can see that it's now treated these as different separate parts. Now we do want to keep these grouped together, but in order to select the different parts, let's use our direct selection tool. With our white arrow selected, carefully click on this edge of this circle, and with it selected, we can change its fill color to be a solid black. Let's do the same for the other side. Click on the other side, then choose the fill color and change it to black as well. If we want, we can also hide these out of the way. Object, hide, selection, and they'll go away. Let's do the same for this side. Object, hide, and then selection, and now they're gone. We'll recolorize these top parts of the wedge by clicking on the outer edge here. With it selected, we'll change the fill color for it to be 70% black, which is actually this color right here. With that one done, we can hide it. This time I'm going to start to use my keyboard shortcuts of Command 3. Let's do the same thing down here. Select it. In our case, change your fill color to be 70% black, and then Command 3 will also hide once it's done. For this next portion, carefully click on it. We're going to make that 30% black. Change its fill color to be right here, and with it selected, Command 3 will hide it, and do the same for the one on the other side. 30%. Select it again, and Command 3 will deselect it. To get rid of these inside little triangles, with your direct selection tool, click and drag over that center point, hit the delete key once to delete that, and then twice to delete the rest of the circle. Now, in order to bring back all the parts that we've drawn, we can go up to Object and choose Show All. And this will bring everything back. Let's group it all together. Choose your black arrow selection tool, click and drag over the entire object, then go to Object and group it. This is a good point to save, so let's go to File and Save and continue on to our third object. I want to close out my Pathfinder and my Transform for now, just to give us some room to work through. With this one brought up, we need to draw a triangle. To do this, the tool we're going to use is going to be our Polygon tool, which is hiding underneath all of the other Shapes tools. We can click once in the center of our shape. Let's set our radius to be 1.5 with 3 sides. Now by default, this is going to give us just a regular isosceles triangle. We can also set our fill and stroke color to be back to the default by clicking on the default fill and stroke here. With my black arrow selection tool, I'm going to click and drag until it matches the bottom left-hand corner. Then, to match the other points, I'm going to use my white arrow direct selection tool. Click away to deselect the object, then carefully hover over the top point and move it up to the top. Then click on the bottom point and move it over to the bottom right-hand side. Now with it selected, let's go up to our fill color and set it to be none. While we're up here, we can also change our stroke size to be 30 points. When it does this, you can see that it creates a thicker line from the center point outward. We want to change it to the inside edge. You can open your stroke panel over here on the side, and if you only see the weight and no other options, you can click on the little options bar to show more options. From here, you can do align the stroke to the inside edge. There it is, looking good there. The final thing we want to do is to convert this outline stroke into a filled-in object. To do this, go up to Object, down to Path, and choose Outline Stroke. This will convert your outline to a filled-in object. Now, once again, we can click on our default fill and stroke to make our filled-in object white and our outline to be black. To draw off the little compass, we're going to use the Shaper tool. The Shaper tool is located underneath all of your regular shapes, and it looks like a little circle with a pin on it. This tool allows you to easily draw lines and shapes freehand, and it will automatically convert it to regular shapes. Let's set our fill color to be none and keep our stroke color to be a black outline. Next, to draw a line, all you've got to do is click and drag from the bottom edge up, and you can see, even if it's off by a little bit, it'll automatically straighten it out. Let's do the same for the other side. Click on the bottom edge and draw it up, and it will draw off nicely. The other thing you can do is draw a circle. Click and drag, and it creates a nice little perfect circle up at the top there too. And let's get this center point dragged across there. Perfect. Now with this done, let's clean up our creation. Choose your black arrow selection tool. I'm going to zoom in so I can see this top circle. With it selected, let's set the fill color to be none and set the stroke size to be 5 points. Once this is done, we can go to Object, Lock the selection, and now it's no longer editable, but it's still visible. I'm going to zoom out, Command and the minus sign. Let's select both of the legs. We'll have them be 5 points as well, and then select the crossbar and let it be 5 points too. In order to trim a given line, I'm going to zoom down to these bottom portion of these legs. Select one of the legs, and the tools we're going to use are going to be the scissors tool. It's hiding underneath the eraser, so choose scissors. Then carefully click on the line where it says path to trim it at that point. Let's do the same for the other side. Hold down the Command key and select the second line. You can let go of Command and then click on the path to trim it. Now we can use our selection tool to click the bottom portion of our leg, and let's change its stroke to be 3 points. And do the same for the other side as well. Select it, and 3 points for there. The top portions, we'll select them. Those can be 10 point. Now in order to merge together the top two lines that we have, we want to use our joiner tool. The joiner tool is located underneath the shaper tool, so click and hold on it and choose join. With this, all you have to do is click and drag and circle around those 2 points, and now they're merged together. When it does this, this is going to give you a very sharp miter joint. Let's use our selection tool and make sure your lines are selected. Then we can go to our stroke panel and change your corner to be a blunt beveled corner. We can also change our end caps to be squared off as well. If we scroll down, you can see now they're nice and squared off at that end too. I'm going to zoom out so I can see everything. Now let's go up to Object and unlock everything to unlock our little circle. As we did with the others, let's click and drag over all of our lines and shapes, just carefully selecting the entire compass that we created. From here, let's go up to Object, down to Path, and choose Outline Strokes. This will convert everything to a nice filled-in object. From here, let's open our Pathfinder panel, Window, down to Pathfinder if you don't have it open like I do, and choose the first one on the first row. This will unite everything together to be one solid object. Now that this is done, we can click and drag and place it on top of our triangle. This is a good point to save, so let's go to File and Save. The final color palette that we're going to paint, we'll start off by using the pencil tool. The pencil tool is hiding underneath your join tool, and it looks like a pencil. With it selected, before we start drawing, let's double click on the pencil tools icon to open up the pencil tool options. Set your fidelity to be a little bit closer to the smoother side. Make sure Keep Selected is checked on, Close Paths, and also Edit Selected Paths is selected too. We'll say OK to this. Then you can click and drag and follow around the outer edge of your palette. If yours is off by a little bit, that's okay. Also, while you've got it drawn, I should have set my stroke color to be black and a fill color to be none. Now it's set up. If you have to stop drawing and you need to start again, make sure your cursor is close to the end so that when you click and drag, you can continue dragging on. Continue until you go all the way around the outside edge of your palette back to the starting point, and once it's drawn. Again, if yours is off by a little bit, that's okay. Once this is drawn, let's do the inside edge. And there it's set there. And let's do all of the little black shapes as well on side of this one. If you do make a mistake, you can always delete it away or hit undo and go back and redraw it again. Now that this is done, let's select each one of them and fill it in with black. I've got this one selected. All I'm going to do is to swap out my fill and stroke color by clicking on the little arrow right here. Choose your selection tool, click on the other one, and a good keyboard shortcut to know is Shift X. That will swap them out. So select and Shift X, select and Shift X for each one. To fill in our palette, we'll have it selected. Let's change its fill color to be just a solid white. The final thing we need to do is to cut out this center. So with the inside portion selected, hold down Shift and also get the outside edge, so both of these are selected. Once again, let's open up our Transform panel, and our Pathfinder panel. And by the way, it's also available at the bottom of your Properties panel. And choose the second one to minus the front. Doing this may look like it didn't do much, but it actually cut a hole in the center of where that smaller object was drawn off. To draw the little paintbrush, let's grab our rectangle tool, set our fill color to be none and our stroke to be black, and draw a simple rectangle around the entire area. Even though it's going to be larger, later on we'll fix it. Once this is done, let's open up our Transform panel. So go to Window and Transform. From here, let's play around with the roundedness of the corners by our Transform. So let's open up the rectangle properties. Down towards the bottom, we're going to uncheck the little link so that I can type in a different field for each one of these. This top edge, we're going to click the up arrow until it rounds off once for both the right and the left top side. Next, we can use our direct selection tool, the white arrow, Let's zoom in, Command and the plus sign, then hold down your space bar till I can see this bottom edge. Carefully click on this corner and drag it in, then carefully click on this corner and drag it in to match. Now I can do Command and the minus sign to zoom back out and go up to this top portion. Let's use our pencil tool to draw off the top portion of it. The pencil tool selected, click and drag around, and again, if yours is off by a little bit, that's okay. Now with both of these drawn off, let's use our selection tool to select both the top and bottom of your paintbrush. We'll swap out the fill and stroke so that it's filled in with black, and let's make this into a compound path. Go up to Object, down to Compound Path, and choose Make. What this is going to do is to treat both of these objects as one solid object, so it's kind of like grouping. However, now we can take our compound path and let's place it over our artboard and let's rotate it just a little bit. This time to rotate, you can use your selection tool and click on the outside edge and rotate it this way. That looks good. Now to make it look like it's actually going through the art panel, hold down the Shift key and select both the paintbrush and the palette. Both of those are now selected, so let's go to Object, down to Intertwine, and choose Make. You can see when it does this, it's going to ask what part do we want to put behind it. And let's choose this part. Now you can see it looks like it's going through this area. It also, you can see I've lost my little panels. And if this happens to you, not your panels, your little black paint swatches that we created. But if this happens to you, simply go to Object, down to Arrange, and let's send it to the back. Now that brings them all back to the front. The last thing we want to do is to group everything together. So choose your black arrow selection tool, click and drag over everything, go to Object, and down to Group. By the by, I realized I didn't group these together as well. So if you haven't been following the book and just following me, make sure to select both your triangle and compass. Let's go to Object and group those together too. Now we can move on to the final part of this project.